Hey friends, it's Nancy. I'm really excited to share this project with you today. So I am doing a collaborative project with Diane, Carol Laws, and Gail Agostinelli. So together as a group, we decided we would post videos today to highlight how to incorporate vintage fabrics into your journals and crafting and art. So here's what I wanted to share. I bought this tablecloth at, I think it was a garage sale. I think it was a great big huge tub full of vintage linens. I was able to clean up a lot and spent a lot of hours ironing them and put them in my booth at the antique shop. But this giant tablecloth, it was stained. It was really too big for anybody to really use. Our dining room tables aren't that big anymore. And it was linen and it needed a lot of ironing, and ain't nobody got time to do that kind of ironing. So I ripped it up, and what did I do with it? I'll show you what it looks like. Sorry, I should have been better prepared. So there was some of these big motifs, and there was these strips of cross stitch, and then along the edge they had these little buds. And some lace on the edge. So I tore it up, and half of it I coffee dyed. The other half I've left white. So I've made 2 tags, and I want to show you how I did that. And I'm also making some tags with the pure white. And I just left the original lace adhered to the bottom here. Okay, so what you need to get yourself is an iron. Yes, ladies, there are people who don't own irons. Get your vintage fabric really crisp. You can use a spray starch or a fabric finish. I make my own starch using liquid starch, water, and vodka. And that's my preferred because it's actually cheap compared to, gosh, what's the kind that I really used to like? Mary Beth's fabric finish or something like that. And it's really expensive for a small bottle. I used to use that, and then I found out I could make my own for pennies. Then what you need, let me grab that, is this stuff called Heat and Bond iron-on adhesive. Now it comes in a 5-yard roll. It's 17 inches by 5 yards. I got this at Michael's. I used a coupon, of course. I think the original price was around $12 Canadian, and I've had this a while and I still got a lot. So cut using ruler, scissors, or if you have a rotary cutter and an acrylic ruler, cut off some strips. So I decided to go with a big tag. So I used this one as sort of the model. This one I think is 6 1/4 by 3. I don't like the corners, so I've made mine a little longer here. So cut some strips, and you can just leave them rectangular right now until after you've got you get to the next step. Let's just put it that way. So adhere it to the back of your linen piece, and then I will show you. You leave the paper on. Follow the instructions. Make sure the fabric that you're using is safe to use a hot iron on. Linen, of course, is going to be fine, but if you were using something like this silky lace or something, that's going to melt. So, and also, you know, nylon laces, that sort of thing, those will melt with a hot iron. So just check your fabrics first. All right, so now I am going to start showing you how I'm going to add some lace to that. So Lord knows there's a lot of them around here. So this is a piece of vintage lace. I've decided I'm going to put it along the bottom, and I leave a little overhang so that I can square it up later. And I decided I wanted a really light lace for the top because on this one I did a ribbon and an eyelet. This one I did lace and an eyelet. This one I'm just going to put a button on. So I'm just going to have this. I don't want it to be too chunky. And I threaded a little bit of pink lace through the button and tied it. So I'm just going to glue that on the top. And once it has the angles cut here, it's going to be really cute. Okay, so I used Fabri-Tac to tack the lace down. Then I'm going to get out the sewing machine. So let me do that. Now, if you're like me and you need to have things square, I'll show you a little tip. So if you have a ruler and where's my bone folder? There's my bone folder. So I kind of want it just under that green stitch. So I'm going to square it up. And use your bone folder to mark it. And it's going to mark that fabric, but it's not cut, it's not permanent, it's not ink, it's not pencil. No muss, no fuss. Then I'm just going to lay down a little track of glue here, and is there a right side and a wrong? Yeah, there's a right side and a wrong side. So then just kind of tack that down. So the reason I'm using the Heat and Bond is because sometimes when you use liquid glue on fabric, it seeps up and marks the fabric, and I certainly don't want that to happen. So let's turn this around. And like I said, I am going to do some stitching. I'll show you how I stitched the other ones first while we let this dry for a second. And you want to center that on there, so like I've got the 4 scallops across there. Okay. So even though I've glued it, before I adhered it to the card, I stitched down the lace. You can do one of two things. You can remove the paper backing from the piece of fabric, or you can stitch right through the fabric. If you're just using a straight stitch, stitch through the fabric or through the paper, and it will stabilize it. If you're going to use a decorative stitch, take the paper off because it'll be impossible to remove later. Using a straight stitch, that perforates the paper, and you just, once you peel it up, you can tear it. So, I'm going to stitch both sides of this, and I'm using an ecru sort of color that blends in. And then once I've got that lace stitched down, I'm going to do a row of stitching around. Now I used a double row of stitching, trying to make it a little messy, which I'm no good at, but you know. Okay, I'm just going to pause this for a minute while I do the stitching. Okay, the lace is stitched down, and I stitched through the paper. So, like I said, it's perforated paper, so you can just pick up a corner and peel that off. Don't get rammy, take your time so you don't pull your stitches right out. And even though I've followed the edge of the lace, it perforates that too. Okay. So next I'm going to go to the ironing board with a piece of file folder that I've cut to size. and adhere this fabric base to the cardstock, or not cardstock, the file folder. And once that's on, then I'm going to do the stitch. I'm going to trim the corners, and then I'll do the stitch around. The reason I'm doing this is in a two-part process is because I don't want any of the stitches that were across the lace to show on the card, but I do want the outside edge stitched. And while we're talking about stitching, you don't have to sew at all. The glue holds the lace down fine, and the Heat and Bond holds the fabric to the card fine. You could do hand stitches if you wanted to do sort of a folksy, ratty-tatty sort of a look, although this is kind of ratty-tatty as it is. But whatever your preference is, whatever your skill level says, go for it. Alright, I'm going to go to the ironing board and I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back from the ironing board, and this fabric piece is now adhered solidly and thinly to this piece of file folder. Now I have a template that this is how I want the tops to look. So I'm using a rotary cutter, but you know, scissors are fine. So I'm just going to square up this edge first to take off the excess lace. And then I want to take this top off, and using my template, again, I'm not going to use a pencil or a pen because I don't want those marks to show if you just miss the cutting line a little bit. So I'm using my bone folder to just put a line there. And for this little cut, I'll use scissors. Perfect. Alright, now back to the sewing machine. Right, now I'm back again. I'll bring this up so you can have a bit of a closer look. The stitch length that I use is 2.4. I don't want it too close. I am going to ink around the edge a very little bit with some antique photo, and then I will glue on the button if I can remember where it went. So, where's my ink? There's the button, found button. And there's got to be ink around here somewhere. Oh my gosh, I was looking right at it. Does that ever happen to you? Okay. Still missing my distressing tool. I know it's around here somewhere. So I just do a very little light ink here. If you can lift up the lace, you can do a little bit of ink under there, but I've stitched my lace down. That just sort of, it's not a lot where you can actually see the distressing. It's just more suggesting distressing in something that's already really distressed. The thread that I use is Gutermann's. I don't know if that's a brand that's available everywhere. It's German, and in most sewing stores, that's the brand of thread that they carry. I mean, you certainly can use darker thread if you want your stitching to really show up. I wanted it to sort of fade into the background. it's there, but it's not a feature. All right. The other two tags that I've finished so far, I did use an eyelet, a 3/16 eyelet. My Crop-A-Dile worked fine cutting the hole and setting the eyelet. I was worried that it might, tear at the fabric rather than cut a nice hole, but it worked just fine. But this one, I thought I'd do something different. I hate it when the glue does that. So that's my little project that I wanted to show you. I hope you thought it was interesting and you'll give this a try yourself. You can look for tablecloths, dresser runners, handkerchiefs, napkins, pillowcases. Sometimes you'll find pillowcases with embroidery and crocheted lace. So take a look at yard sales and rummage sales. Those are usually good places to find this sort of thing because nobody wants it anymore. They're a lot of work to care for. Thrift stores, I find they're pretty pricey. Like a doily for $2. I'm not paying $2 for a doily. I'll pay $1/4 for it at a yard sale or a rummage sale or even an auction. You can get really nice groups of linens at auctions and estate sales. So I hope that's given you some inspiration. I can't wait to see what our other 3 ladies have made with their projects. And so take a look at the links in the description below so that you can find out what the other collaborators did. And we will talk to you again soon.